So good morning to all. So please ensure that my voice is clear. Okay, fine. Thank you. So we'll start. So in yesterday's session, we discussed about assemblers. So in today's session, we'll be discussing about modular programming, concept of modular programming, and then also we'll also discuss about linking and relocation. So if time permits. So at the end of the session, we'll just have a comparison of how to write programs using assembly language programming as well as using assemblers, just for your understanding purpose. So, okay, fine. So moving on to today's session, modular programming. Have you ever heard of this term, modular programming? In any of your subject, have you ever? This is the first time I'm hearing this term, modular programming. Any answers from your side? No, sir. Okay, fine. So then no issues. So okay, then before going to modular programming, let me ask you a few questions. See, assume that you people are going to be planning to conduct a symposium during the month of August, this academic year, just for example, okay. So you're planning a symposium to be conducted in a college during the month of August. So what all activities you will do initially? See, anyone can just turn your mic and then answer, or you can just post your answers in chat box. Because whatever question I ask is a basic question. In case if you're planning for an conduct a symposium, so what are the things, actions that you'll take a plan or actions that you plan? What happened? No reply from anyone. Are you people active? So okay, fine. So whenever you are planning to have conduct a symposium, so usually we will be having lot of activities to be taken care. Just like that. Okay, very good. I got an answer from Sanjay. Thank you, Sanjay. So first things we have to plan what are the events that we are going to conduct, correct or not? So it may be technical events, it may be non-technical events, and then determine the date. Okay, fine. So we have to fix the date first. So after depending upon the date, we need to plan accordingly. If the date is too near, we have to plan accordingly. So we have to determine the date and timings and all. We have to determine everything is fine. See, after determining all this, deciding all this, we need to decide the activities that we are going to conduct. Yes or no? So, for example, technical events, non-technical events. Again, in technical events, we may have different types of events. Okay, circuit debugging, coding program, paper presentation, whatever it may be. So, even project exhibition, all this comes under technical events. And non-technical events also we have a lot of games or something. Okay, something we have a lot of what outdoor games and something like that. So we have to plan properly. Okay, and then apart from this, we need to take care of what your registration process. We need to take care of this reception committee, stage decoration, comparing team, and then about this hospitality team. Sometimes it may be required. You may need to pick up and drop the guest. Food, transportation. So all this, we have a lot of things to be taken care if you are planning for an symposium. So do you think it is all possible by a single person to handle the entire symposium? No, very good. So obviously no, because the person, though if a person may be actively involved, he may not have time, or he may not energy to take care of all the activities. So what we do normally, in a work for a single person is not able to, he's not able to handle. So what we will do normally? Any answers? See, if you tell the answer, I think the technical part of it will be very easy. I may not explain it much in detail, so you'll understand with this itself. Very good. Vignesh, you have replied a good answer. So you have to select the person and then assign for each person. Same is the case. So when you have so much of activities to be taken care, so single person cannot do. So what he will do is he will start assigning in charge, a coordinator for each department or each section. So, for example, he may assign a person X to take care of the food committee. He may assign another person Y to take care of transportation facilities, another person for hospitality, like that. So, he will just, what he is doing is he's just dividing the work among N people, and then he'll assign the work. So, each that N people will start working parallelly, and at the end, what will happen? So, if everything goes smooth, so obviously what we can say that we have conducted symposium in successful manner. Okay, yes or not? So, what is the main purpose of doing like this? Is there any specific reason of assigning the task to different people and then achieving the target? Is there any reason for this? Why we are dividing a task among N people instead of doing by a single person? To save time, very good. To save time, okay. Then what else? To make everything easily accessible, reduce complexity. So very good. Okay, fine. Thank you. So I got good answers from you. So the work can be more effective. So as we get, okay, all your points are valid points. So thank you for your responses. So very simple. See, that is the case. In order to reduce the load on a single person, we are just dividing the work and then we are achieving a target. So this only called as what? Divide and conquer approach. Okay. So this approach, it holds suitable for most of the cases. So one such a divide and conquer approach is nothing but your modular programming. So modular programming, as the name indicates, modular, which means modules, programming your modules. So what I want to say is, see, in case since you are now since you're in college level, you may be writing programs maybe 100 or 200 lines maximum. But when you go to industry side, and most of your industry programming projects, if you see, means they may consist of thousands of lines of instructions or operations. So when that is the case, a single person, he may, I will not say that he may not do the work. He may do, but it may take some time. So, or sometimes may extend the duration of the project. So when that is the case, what he will do is he will simply divide the task. So he will simply divide the task and then into smaller tasks, usually called as modules. So dividing the major task into smaller, just like I said in previous case, how you are going to what happened? Okay, fine. So how we are dividing the committees and then we are assigning in charge for each committee, So similar in this case. So he will divide the program. First, he will study the problem statement. After studying the problem statement, what he will do? He will just divide the problem into different small programs or sub-programs, usually called as what? Modules. And then he'll assign the modules to each individual. So each individual will take care of that individual module. They will develop a program. At the end, what you should do? So you should combine all the modules together to get your final program. So this is the concept that we are following in your modular programming also. So first we'll see what is a module. So as people said, modular programming is nothing but what? So first you have to study the problem statement. So depending upon the problem statement, you have to clearly assign task. Okay, or you have to you have to split the task into split the main task into overall small number of tasks, and then assign each smaller task to individual. So this concept only called as what? Modular programming. Okay. So and this is what I have mentioned in this slide. So this concept holds good when the given task is very large. So, and it cannot be developed by a single programmer. We go for what? Modular programming concept. Okay. And mostly this is a practice usually we follow in your software companies. So the main advantage is, as someone said, that so it reduces the complexity level of the person. So you can able to manage it much more easier way. So how will you first decide to perform this modular programming? So we have to follow certain steps. So first step is we have to define what is the overall work to be done with the program. So as I said, that symposium example, first you should list out all the events or activities that you should take care in the event in the symposium. Same is the case here. So first you should define the overall work to be done by the program. So after defining it, so we have to divide that program into what or a smaller task. So that is what doing. So as I said, first you have to list all the activities, then list the activities into what groups. So that you can assign an in charge for each group. Correct? So you have to break the overall program into what smaller tasks. So after deciding it, so once everything is assigned to small, you have divided into smaller tasks, and you usually call this smaller task one usually called as what modules. So modules nothing but small tasks. So after assigning in charge for these modules, what you will do next step? So now everything is going fine. So everyone is taking care of their, each individual is taking care of their committee. So something is initially needed actually. There should be proper communication or data between these committees. For instance, for example, suppose assume that there is a paper presentation even going on, and the time is already 1 o'clock or 1:30. So next the guest participants have to go to lunch. So what should be there? So there should be proper information or communication from that paper presentation in charge to the food committee in charge. So that he will the food in charge, no, he will take care of all the necessary things prior the participants arrive. Yes or no? So there should be proper communication. Suppose if the paper presentation in charge doesn't inform anything about anything about the participants' arrival, so what they will do? So the food in charge committee in charge will not be able to handle the situation properly. So this is mainly due to lack of communication. So once when you divide into smaller tasks, you should properly communicate or communicate or data what it may be between these tasks. So that should be there. So once after determining this, the next is you are going to develop your assembly language code for each task. So usually called as modules. So that is the next step that you will do. So after developing each module, what you will do? You will ensure that each module works properly. So you have to test the individual modules that you have developed. So after developing, after testing, if you feel that all the models that you have developed independently are working well, so all are fine with no errors. So obviously, what you can do, we have to combine these models into a single program. So once you combine into a single program, so for all this we have various software tools available. We'll see in detail in next coming slides. So after combining into a single program, we need to test and debug your program if for any errors. In case if there is any errors, we have to fix for it. If everything goes fine, document the program. So these are the steps involved in a modular programming. Okay, and moving on to advantages. So this slide will be very easy for you because most of you have already mentioned the advantages. So models are very easy to develop since it reduces the complexity level. We can easily develop an individual single module and then we can test also. So it can be developed independently by different programmers. See, you can also actually, what does this point represent means? You can also allocate experts for any individual models if needed actually. So once after developing, testing and debugging also will become easier and independent. You can be able to do. So and these 2 points. See, point number 4 and 6. You have to make a note of it. So common tasks can be developed as models and can be stored in as libraries. So suppose whenever you are going to write a programs and if there is any common task, usually we may come across such situations. So those common tasks you can develop as separate modules and you can store it in library, and whenever needed you can just get it from the libraries. Okay. So this is called libraries, and this is repeated task. So there is some difference between common task and repeated task. Okay. So repeated task can be again, you can also develop it as a modules and you can store it as subroutines or macros. Okay, subroutines. And so we'll be seeing subroutines and macros also in detail in the next slides. And any further changes that we can make, so it can be localized since you are developing models individually. So it can also be easily targeted. And these are few more advantages of your modular programming. So documentation of models can be done independently. So and models can be reused within a program or across different programs also we can able to use. So individual models are portable. So which means so the model developed for one platform can also able to use it in other platforms. And And the most important is parallel work. So like just like a pipelining. So which means what? Since n people are working independently, suppose if you have 10 models, all the 10 models will be what? Work parallelly by different persons. So therefore your program development time will be reduced drastically. So that is the main advantage of using your modular programming. And moving to your disadvantages. Disadvantages, any guess you can have? At least one or two you can just state. I think all over, almost I shared the slide itself. So the first drawback is your what? So combining of models, okay, well, it's a difficult task. So why I say so is, see, when you combine, you cannot just like that, you can combine the models. So care should be taken that you combine it in a sequential manner, okay. Well, so there will be a hierarchy to be followed, okay, a sequential order. So you have to, there is a tool available which performs all these activities. Anyway, but you should ensure that what all the models are combined in a sequential manner, okay, depending upon some address. And then manpower, obviously, since n people are working together, and it requires quite a lot of manpower. And economical, so when manpower increases, obviously what resources also will increases, so it's less economical. See, this point number 2 and 3, it's not a major problem, but still it's a drawback for a modular programming. And last one, when testing models, so you see, in some cases, when you're going to test a model, the data for that model may be needed from some other model. So what will do in that case? So we may not able to test the model properly. So in such cases, we use a tool called drivers. So these drivers takes care of this issue. But the problem is developing this driver itself require more amount of time and effort. So these are the few drawbacks that we come across in modular programming. So any doubt we have? If no, we'll move on to the next topic, linking and relocation. So okay. So any idea what is meant by linking and relocation from the title? So you can just make a wild guess, even if it is wrong, no issues. Linking and relocation. I think you can able to guess the meaning for the word linking. Any response from your side? What is linking or where it is used? Very good. Vignesh, fine. So it's linking two models. Okay. So the answer is correct. So not only two models, as I said, now we have n number of models. Okay. It depends upon your program. So main program. So the process of combining these various models into a single program is called linking. In simple terms, if I want to say, the process, I repeat, the process of combining various program models. Okay. So here it's okay. This diagram I'll show you later. So the process of combining various program models into a single program, we call it as linking. And to achieve this linking, we need a tool. So and that software tooling usually call it as what? Linker. So now we got what is meant by, now we know what is meant by linking and what is a linker. Okay. So there are three major functions of a linker. So can you guess what could be the three functions? So okay, anyway, I think you may not able to guess. So okay, wow. So out of three major functions, just now I said one of the major drawback of your modular programming is you're combining, the process of combining. So when you combine, you have to combine in such a way that you combine the modules in a sequential manner. Okay, wow. So based on the address information. So that's what. So one of the major function of this linker is it generates a link map file. So which with the help of this link map file, it can be able to which contains the address information, and from that address information, it will it combines your models into a single model. Okay, wow. So once after generating all the link modules, the linker will also generate a linker file, so which contains the binary codes. So this link file contains the binary codes of all the combined modules together. So these are the two major functions. And apart from this, linker also performs what another task. That is, it will assign what only relative address. It will assign any relative address starting from 0, which means it will not assign any absolute address. That was I want to mention. So when I say it assigns only relative address from any value, if any value from 0, it does not address, does not assign what absolute address. So and this linked models with the relative address only called as what relocatable program. So which means what you can you can load this program at any memory location on the user space for further execution purposes. So now we got what is meant by linking and what is meant by relocation. Okay. So linking is nothing but combining your various n number of modules into a single program. I call it as linking. So this linking is achieved with the help of a tool called linker. And after linking all the programs, so the linker will assign a relative address, and linked modules, whatever you have with that relative address, can be loaded into any memory location for further execution. So that can be called as what relocatable program. So the term relocatable. So and this is achieved with the help of a tool called locator. So this locator will assign now it will be used to assign what absolute or specific address to the link file. Okay. So in our case, suppose if you want to run a program in 8086 based microprocessor based system, so the program should be mapped to what this user memory address, so that you can able to run the program. Right. So this is all about your linking and relocation. And okay, so just to make a note of this. So in linking relocation, we come across these 4 different types of files. So one we call it as .asm file, .obj file, .exe file, and .bin file. See, all this, you people will be coming across when you do programs using an assembler. Okay, well, so when, as I said, we will be having a lab course. In lab course, you'll be doing programs and using assembler, and we use assembler. No, you'll be coming upon these files. Okay, so for time being, just make a note of it. .asm file, .obj file, .exe, and .bin file. Okay. So just make a note of it. Now I'll go to the block diagram of this linking and relocation and explain you in detail. So I know this. I think the image will be quite a little bit blurred. So I apologize for it. Please bear with me for some few minutes. So this is a block diagram of your linking and relocation. And first circle that you will see, that is nothing but you call it as source model. So what do you mean by source model? The first block, that the first circle that you will see, it is nothing but your source model. So normally what do you mean by source model? Any idea what is meant by source model? So here we are discussing about your modular programming. So under modular programming, I'm talking about your linking and relocation. So what could be the source model now in this case? Sorry, okay, I'll just frame the questions. Okay, someone has a model from which message comes from. Model from which message comes from. Okay, fine. So we people will be writing programs in what language? So restrict yourselves to your microprocessor subject, and then you can answer me. So mostly C. That's what I'm telling you. Restrict yourself from microprocessor point of view. So as I said, we have 3 different levels of programming, correct? Machine level, assembly language, and then high level. So out of these 3, which level of programming we will choose? High level. Okay, fine. High level programming. And so what about when you compare with microprocessor? In microprocessor, do we use high level languaging? No, then what type of language we use? Yes, so that's the answer what I was expecting from you. So we use assembly language programming as that with the help of mnemonics. Okay, So usually we use what? Assembly language programming. So when I say, so see here, no, we are restricting ourselves to a microprocessor. So even models can be developed with the help of high-level language. It's possible. So, but we are restricting ourselves to assembly language. So that's whatever. So what I want to say is the first circle here that indicates your source module. So it is nothing but source code, whatever it may be. So usually it's nothing but an assembly language. So as to develop this assembly language, we have various text editor tools available like Edit, Notepad, WordPad, etc. So we have different types of these text editor tools. With the help of these tools, I will be able to develop what your assembly language programming. And remember, since it is assembly language programming, you should store the file or save the file as .asm file. So got my point. So that's why I said now we have 4 different types of file: .asm, .obj, .exe, and .bin file. So in the first case, when you write a program using assembly language, that program using whatever tool it may be. So you have to save that file as what? .asm files. Okay. So this is the first one. And second, the first block here that shows your assembler or other translators. Okay. So why they have mentioned the translators means, as I said, you can also use what? A high-level language. .asm, assembler language. So assembler or other translators. So when you're going to, when your source model is going to be a high-level language, so obviously I need what? Translators. It can be either compiler or interpreter, whatever it may be. So I'm not least bothered about. So the 4 extensions that we come across is a .asm file. Okay, I'll just show the slide once again. That I'll share the slide. You can just note. Please make a note of this because we are in the diagram and explain where these 4 files will come. .asm, .obj, .exe, and .bin. Okay, fine, got it. So I'll go to a previous slide now. Okay, so the first block, source model. So this source model only what will be in .asm format. Okay, so after framing creating the model, I'm going to what? Convert it into what? Object model. So for converting object model is nothing but your it'll be using your machine language. Simply, if you want to say, it's nothing but machine language. So I need a tool called assembler. So assembler converts your assembly language programming into what? Machine language. So if it is a high-level language, I'll use what? Other translators like compiler or interpreter. So the output of this assembler is nothing but your the same program in machine language. So that file only will be in .obj format. Okay. So got my point. The .asm models that has been developed individually. So you can assemble using the tool what? MASM assembler. So this MASM assembler will generate what? .obj files. Okay. So next step is your linker. So next block is your linker. The second. So if you see means under linker, we have various other object models. So here we are just showing how to convert a single source model into object model. Similarly, we'll be having n number of object models. So all these object models will be combined or linked to form your main model. Okay. And here, if you see, here's something they have mentioned as from library. So as I said, there are some repeated tasks which are needed, or some common task if needed. You can also add those object files in the linker. Okay. So all these object files will be linked and be converted into what? A single main program, and it usually we call it as what? A load module. So it will be combined into a single program, and this will be called as what? Load module. So so we use the tool what? As I said previously, here we use a software tool called link. So with the help of this link file, all the .obj files of all the models can be combined to get a single relocatable file. So that file is called as what? .exe. So which is nothing but your executable file. Okay, .exe file. So and then we have a block called loader. The main purpose of this loader is nothing but it is used, as I said, we use a tool called locator. So one example was locator tool is exe2bin. exe2 numerical 2 bin. So we have a software tool called exe2bin. So with the help of this software tool, locator tool, the .exe file can be converted into what? .bin file. And this bin file, it can be downloaded to the user memory, and then in x86, and then you can use it for execution. So that's what it's executing the program. Okay. So dot ASM, which is nothing but a source module, dot OBG, which object modules, and then link. After linking, we'll get a complete file that we call it as what, dot exe, and at the end, I'll be converting it into what, binary file for execution purposes. And here they have just mentioned IO drivers. So in case if there is any input needed from any input output devices, you can also what, add those. There you can also get the data. And in linker, there is something called memory map. So this is the one which I was saying that as I mentioned, no, three functions of your linker. So the first main function is it will generate your link memory map. So with the help of this link memory map only, it will link all the models in a sequential manner based on the address information. So that is also available in this linker. Okay. So this is what the block diagram specifies. Block diagram of your linking and relocation. And okay, fine. So there is 4 terminals which you come across your linking and relocation. So these are the 4 terms. So assembler time, link time, load time, and execution time. I think you can able to guess what could be the answers for all these times. So what is my assembler time? Assembler time. See, from the name itself, we can guess the answer. Nothing much difficult. Assembler time. Sorry. Very good. Sanjay, Vignesh, only these 2 students are almost, and Ujjwala, only 3 students are responding always. Okay, fine. Thank you, Sanjay. So time needed for the assembler to process. So in simple words, the time required for the assembler to convert the source model into object model, we call it as what? Assembler time. Okay. And link time. So time required to link all the modules into a single module. We call it as what? Link time. So time, repeat, the time required to combine all the source models into what? A single model. So time to establish the link. So that we call it as what? Link time. And followed by link time, we have load time. So load time is nothing but, see, once you combine all the models into a single module, so you need to what? Load that model into a location, okay, user memory. So the time there will be some time will be required depending upon the program size. So that only called as what? Load time. And last one is your execution time, that you know, the time required for the execution of the total instructions, okay, when the program. So you call it as what? Execution time. So all these decides your speed of the process. So all this together we call speed of your assembler in general. Okay. So we have 10 more minutes. So I will just come. I think we stack. You people are very much familiar. So I will just complete stack. Okay. So 10 more minutes, it will be sufficient, I guess. So what do you mean by stack? Data structure. Okay. Data structure padichiruppa, Sanjay, correct? So what is the concept or idea behind the stack? The same idea, only here also it applies, nothing new. Very good. Follows LIFO. So okay, LIFO or FILO, whatever it may be. So last in, first out is correct. Okay, so the data element which is going to enter last is going to the first element which is going to be popped out. Okay, then where are the points theorem? Suppose examiner, they're asking you to explain about stack in 8 marks or 6 marks. So what are the points you write? LIFO alone, you can also draw diagrams. Actually, there is a slide which explains that point. So with the only that is sufficient. So you can just recollect what madam said in the previous classes about stack. Stack நடத்தும்போது நிறைய சொன்னாங்களா மேம், என்னென்ன சொன்னாங்க அந்த பாயிண்ட்ஸ் எல்லாம்? So what type of memory it is? Stacks comes under what type of memory? Volatile. Okay. I am asking another type of classification. Volatile, non-volatile. Okay. So another way of classifying what type? What I am asking. So what are the operations that you can perform? இல்ல அப்படி சொல்லுங்க. அதை வச்சு you can able to guess. What are the operations that you can perform on stack? Insertion, deletion, okay, push, pop. Okay, very good, fine. Okay, so almost everyone are telling the same. So we'll see whenever you are able to perform push and pop operations, which means what writing and reading operations. Obviously, it indicates that it's a what read-write type of memory. So your stack comes under what read-writable. It's nothing but portion of a RAM, also called as what read-write memory. So here now we are using the stack for certain special functions. So which I'll tell you whenever required. So we have in 8086, we have a special 16-bit register called stack pointer, stack register, we usually call it as. So each time when you perform any stack write or read operation, you automatically what? Automatically the stack pointer SP, where content of SP will be either incremented or decremented, depending upon the operation that you are going to perform. Okay. So, so this is, I think most of you have said this point. Last in, first out concept. Okay, well, very good. So operations in stack. So yeah, there are a few situations that you should remember. So at what situations you use this stack. So first operation is so whenever so suppose there is any interrupts. I think ma'am said this point. Whenever there is any interrupts and your processor is going to respond to that interrupt, so what will happen? So the processor it temporarily stores all the contents of your 16-bit registers. Or even memory locations or PSW. PSW is nothing but a flag register, program status word. So you usually call it as flag register. Another name for flag register. So all these data it will be temporarily stored in your stack. So and then it will respond to the interrupt. And after that, then once the interrupt is over, what will happen? So it retrieves the data whenever required. So that's what one of the function of your stack. And not only this, so even when there is a shortage of registers. For example, what to say? So when the number of available registers are not sufficient for storing intermediate result or data, whatever it may be, so which means what? Then some of the intermediate result and data can be stored in stack using your push or instructions, and it can be retrieved whenever required using your pop instructions. So for all these situations, we use stack. So that's what. I think same slide. Sorry. So a simple example of a push operation. So what does a push operation do? Push operation. Store in the top. Okay, inserts element, very good. Okay, fine. So which means for every write operation that you're going to perform using stack, so what happened is stack pointer. So as I said, the stack pointer will be automatically decremented, okay, or incremented. So I repeat, whenever you're going to perform any write operation, your stack pointer will be automatically decremented by 2. So why it will decremented by 2? Any idea? Why not 1? Why the stack pointer is getting decremented by 2? So just remember the size of your stack pointer. So Sanjay, so when you so my question is, when you are performing write operation, your stack pointer will automatically decrements by 2. The content of your stack pointer will get decremented by 2. So I'm asking why it is decremented by 2? Why not 1 or any other value? So what is the size of your stack pointer? So there is nothing but 16-bit register. Okay, so it's a word operation. So which means it is going to perform in your word operation. So whenever it performs any word operation, so if, for example, it's going to perform a write operation onto stack, so automatically stack pointer will be decremented by 2. And whenever it is going to perform read operation, it is going to increment by 2. So remember in it, okay, and remember for each push or reading or writing operation, the contents of your stack segment register will not be altered while reading or writing into consumes 2 bits. Okay, it's not 2 bits, Sanjay. We should mention it as 2 bytes. Okay, 2 bits are rather 2 bytes. So and the last topic concept in your stack is stack overflow and underflow. Okay, so So what do you mean by stack overflow and underflow? So both are usually common errors that we come across. So stack overflow. So see, listen, if you can see the first diagram on the right side, top right side top diagram. So if you see, means almost its stack is full. And if you're going to perform any push operation further, so what will happen? No more space. Very good. So it will result in an error called a stack overflow. That situation you call it as what? A stack overflow. And the exact opposite of this. So whenever you are retrieving data from the stack, so which means you're popping up data from the stack. So you can pop one by one. So at one stage, what will happen when all the data has been popped, and even if you try to pop the data, what will happen? No more element will be there to pop. So that will be called as what? Stack underflow. Okay. So with this, I'll just stop my session. Next, we have procedures and macros. So it will not take much time. And one more thing. So I just want to give you a small task. Will you be able to write an addition operation, 8-bit addition operation using assembly language programming and using assembler? Just you can make it right. So I think you can able to write using assembly language programming. It's not a difficult task, but you can try using assembler. 8-bit addition using assembler. So is it possible for you people? We have 3 to 4 days time